Hello, welcome to Excelling Psychology. In this class, I'm going to discuss a model answer with you on designing a study. I've been getting a lot of requests for this answer. I can understand it has a lot of weightage in the paper. Actually, I've written out a sample answer and I am going to publish it on my website. The purpose of making this video is to give you some tips and to point out how exactly I have designed this study. So a sample answer you will be able to read on the website also, but to get the strategy of how you should be designing your study, you can watch this video. The question I have taken from the February-March paper, which came this year only, 2024, and I have taken the study from clinical psychology just because it was the first one. As you know, you have to attempt only one study in the paper from one of the specializations which you have opted for. So if you're taking clinical psychology, this is directly useful to you. Even if you're not taking clinical psychology, you're taking some other specialization, just follow through with me how I have written this answer. It should prove to be useful to you also. Okay, I'm reading out the question first. They've asked us to plan a covert observation to investigate the effectiveness of covert sensitization for treating kleptomania. Your plan must include details about structured observation or unstructured observation, steps for making the study reliable. Alright, so this is what we have to cover. Whatever is given in the question, it's always compulsory to cover that. But besides that, what is given in the syllabus on pages 52 and 53 for designing the study, those features are also compulsory to cover. So in my plan you will find that I have covered those features as well. Let's go through it step by step now. This is a specific research method, covert observation, but regardless of whichever research method is mentioned, you must begin with the aim of the study always. So first you can see I have designed the aim of the study. There's nothing much to do in the aim of the study. Actually, you just have to pick it from the question. You can reword it a little, but there's no reason to do that. So I've written it exactly as given in the question. Just keep one thing in mind. The aim must always begin with the words to investigate or to find out. Okay, don't confuse between hypothesis and aim. In the aim, just give the general purpose of the study. So in this case, it is to investigate effectiveness of covert sensitization for treating kleptomania. Next, we need to give a hypothesis. Now it is very debatable whether you should be giving a hypothesis for an observational study or not. In my opinion, you should not, because hypotheses usually apply to experiments where comparisons are made and correlational studies where we look into relationships. Observation is standing on neither, but still you will see I have given a hypothesis just to be on the safe side. If you see the mark scheme, they have mentioned aim or hypothesis, but in many places you will see it is mentioned aim and hypothesis. So I have written the hypothesis. I would recommend even you write it, though authentically an observational study need not have a hypothesis. Okay, so having clarified that, let us look at what is the hypothesis. Hypothesis is simply that covert sensitization is a significantly effective treatment for kleptomania. As simple as that. Always keep in mind that the aim is the general purpose of the study. The hypothesis is a prediction of what the outcome or the result will be of the study. So this statement says what I am going to find at the end of my study. And I expect that covert sensitization will prove to be useful. This also brings me to the point of not confusing an experiment with an observation. If I am to say something like covert sensitization will be more effective for those who undergo those who undergo covert sensitization will experience greater effectiveness than those who undergo ordinary therapy or say some other therapy like imaginal desensitization. They have not asked us to plan an experiment. So we are not studying differences or making comparisons. It's a simple observational study. Now, one argument can be that even within an experiment, we can do an observation, which is true. Like in 𝗣𝗬𝗬𝗖𝗛𝗍 study last year, within an experiment, they did an observation, because after all, in any experiment, you will need some way of collecting and analyzing data. So you're bound to do either observation or self-report or testing or something like that. But why complicate matters? And then if you design an observation, how exactly are you differentiating it from an experiment in the paper if you are making comparisons? So in my opinion, simply design an observational study. Don't complicate it and introduce an experimental element into it. I have not done that. Okay, so here in this paragraph we have covered the introduction, which has to be there for any study regardless of the research method, aim and hypothesis. Your hypothesis can be directional or non-directional. Again, to an observation, direction really does not apply. That would apply to experiments and correlations. So I've just given a very simple hypothesis. I'm not getting into which type of a hypothesis it is. Next, again, for any study, regardless of what the research method is, we need to discuss sample and sampling technique. Now let's look at that. Sample must include at a minimum details like sample size. So I've mentioned that there should be like 10 participants. Something about the gender is desirable, so male and female both. Age range, I don't have a particular age range in mind, but I just feel that I don't want to include children in the study. That complicates ethics a little bit, so I've just included general adults, so from 18 to 60 years. Also, in clinical studies, since many of them are going to involve patients, it's best to mention how these patients have been diagnosed or how they have been recognized to be patients. So what I've mentioned is that they will be meeting the ICD criteria for kleptomania. These are minimum sample details. Of course, there are other things you can mention, like what are their professions, where they are coming from, which country they are coming from. I just feel that some details become very excessive and they are very time consuming to write. So unless they have a direct bearing on what you're going to write ahead, I feel they are best avoided. So I've written bare minimum what is expected. Now coming to the sampling technique. This is where students make a mistake. They'll just mention the sampling technique. There won't be any elaboration on how that technique will be applied. Make sure you elaborate. You can take any technique. You're free to take random, voluntary or opportunity. Those all are there in our syllabus. So take any, but explain how that technique will be used in the study. Like if we take voluntary sampling, we have to talk about advertisements or announcements. So how an announcement will be made, how will people come to know that the study is taking place. So in my study, I have mentioned that I'll approach psychiatrists. Again, you can read it fully when I publish it. Right now, I'm just broadly discussing how I have highlighted the technique. So there will be psychiatrists who will be contacted and they will share with their patients that a study is taking place. And then if those patients want to participate, they can contact the researchers. So how the patients are coming to know about the study or how an advert or an announcement is reaching them, I have made that very clear. Okay, if I was to use opportunity sampling instead, I would have mentioned how it is convenient for the researchers to get hold of these participants. So there we need to elaborate on the convenience aspect. For example, the researcher would go to a nearby clinic which is nearby his residence and he would just request the kleptomania patients there to participate. Very important to write down this actually, not just leave it at there will be opportunity sampling. Same way, if I were to go for random sampling, who are going to be included in the population list, how they will be selected randomly from that population list, very important to mention those things. So this paragraph was about sample and sampling technique. Now one thing students really miss out is talking about how they are improving the validity and reliability of their plan. That has been made compulsory, so it's good they have made it clear in the syllabus. We have to talk about in any study how reliability and validity is being enhanced in the plan. So here I'm talking about validity in this paragraph. Again, it has to be very specific. What mistakes students make is giving things like very generally. I'm doing double blinding, so there will be validity, or I am not letting participants know about the purpose of the study, so there will be validity. In any paper, be it paper 3, paper 4, you are not expected to give generic answers. Don't give statements which can apply to any study on earth, and any student can write that statement for any study which they have made. Always talk concretely or specifically about what you are designing or what you are discussing. If there is double blinding, where is the double blinding in your study? Exactly where? And how is it proving to be a strength in your study? That is the approach you have to take. So for example, in my plan, I have mentioned what is increasing validity is not telling patients about which treatment they have to undergo. In the previous paragraph, when I said that psychiatrists will contact the patients for the study, that time I have mentioned that they will not tell them which treatment they are undergoing. So they won't name covert sensitization as such. They'll just tell them that it's a well-established treatment. Now how that improves validity is they will not develop expectations from prior knowledge about covert sensitization for how it should work. And that is why their expectations will not interfere in whether the treatment works with them or not. So this is how I specifically explain in my study how the instructions are improving validity. Also, I have mentioned that the patients will not be undergoing any other treatment. So in the previous paragraph, again I have mentioned that the psychiatrist will see to it to announce my study only to those patients who are not already undergoing some treatment. So that means that because they are not undergoing any other treatment, the effects of that treatment cannot interfere with the effects that they will achieve from covert sensitization. That increases validity. Okay, then the next paragraph is about covert sensitization. In the syllabus, if we see the general features that have to be included in any study, they have mentioned procedure. Every study must have a clear procedure that is outlined. So that is what I've done in this paragraph. Because it is about covert sensitization, so I need to highlight the procedure of how covert sensitization will be implemented in my study. Of course, I am drawing from the Glover study, which is given in the syllabus. This is important for two reasons. One thing is, I just can't give about any procedure from the top of my head. It really has to be about covert sensitization. So that I have learned in the Glover study. Secondly, there is a following question which you must be knowing about, which is going to be B1. We have to share some psychological knowledge on which we have based our plan, and we have to give some 2 features of that knowledge that we have used in our plan. Unless I draw something specifically from the syllabus and include it in my plan, I will not be able to answer these questions. So in the next part, I have explained the procedure by drawing from or by getting the ideas from Glover's study. What I'm realizing is, as I'm discussing in this video, that it is important for you to read the study first before you can understand what I'm saying. So just take that approach. First go on my website, just read what I have written, and then come to this video and understand how I have written it. Okay, so again, because I'm not going to read through the whole procedure in this video, it's going to become very time consuming. So maybe you won't be able to understand everything I'm saying unless you read. What I have mentioned in this procedure is that covert sensitization will be provided by first calling patients individually for one-to-one therapy. They will have to provide informed consent. Then they will start undergoing the sessions. In the initial sessions, they will practice muscle relaxation. Then after that, they will start imagining those scenarios in which they usually tend to steal. And then they will imagine something which is aversive, like being arrested or feeling nausea. So you can see it's directly coming from the Glover study. Step by step, I have given those things. Only one more thing that you need to note here is, in the procedure itself, I have included a part about ethics. Ethics is also compulsory to be included in the study. Like, we need to point out where we are following ethical guidelines. So because I have followed written informed consent, I have introduced it in my procedure. So make sure to include ethical guidelines wherever they are appropriate, like wherever they should come in a stepwise manner in the procedure, just write them there. You could write them separately, like a separate paragraph, informed consent will be taken and all, but I just feel the organization and flow becomes better if you write it where it should be there, like where it will be done in the study. Okay, so then I have described about the procedure. In the next part, actually I've come to the main part of the study, which is the observation. Again, I just want to reiterate how I have not converted it into an experiment. So in my study, nowhere have I mentioned any control group which will get some other treatment or a placebo treatment, and I have not done any baseline measurement to do a before after, like repeated measures design type of experiment. Something like I would like you to relate it with Milgram's study last year, which was a controlled observation. There was no experimentation. So there was only one group which was doing the teaching learning task, and their obedience was being measured. So here also it's something like that. Like first they undergo covert sensitization, and then after that there's a small observation or a behavioral test that they undergo, and we just check whether they are showing those signs still of kleptomania or not. Of course, there are many flaws. Like you will say that a control group should be there for comparison, or baseline should be there. Your purpose is to design an observation. Your purpose is not to show that you know how to increase validity or to prove that experiment is better than observation. So don't keep those things in your mind. Focus on observation. Focus on covering all the things in the syllabus about observation. Now in the observation part of the syllabus, specifically if we see, it's mainly about covering where the observation stands on all 4 types: participant, non-participant, structured, unstructured, and so forth. Also they talk about the number of observers we need to mention. So those all details I've made sure to cover in this paragraph. So what I've suggested is that after my patients undergo covert sensitization, they'll have to appear for a behavioral test. They'll be taken to a supermarket under some pretext, and there secretly through shelves, hiding behind the shelves, we'll observe whether they pick up something or not, like they engage in kleptomaniac behavior or not. I have designed it to be covert. That's why they're hiding behind shelves. In this particular question, they have insisted that we make it a covert observation. Also, I have designed it to be structured observation, which also of the question that we need to specify it structured or unstructured. Again, the same thing which I mentioned earlier. Don't just say that it is structured or unstructured. Make it specific. Show how it is structured or unstructured. So why mine is a structured observation? Because the observers, there are 2 of them. This is also important because they have asked for number of observers in the syllabus. So there are 2 of them who are going to independently record what the patients are doing at the supermarket with planned checklists. And on those checklists, which behavioral categories are there, that is also compulsory to be mentioned under structured observation. So one category I have introduced is stealing, and the other one I have introduced is signs of distress. So that is what they will be recording in a standardized way according to what is given in the checklist. Also, I have explained how stealing is operationalized, so that because that's also important for standardization. When the researchers are looking at what the participants are doing, how do they decide whether it is stealing or not? So I have operationalized, since that is the main behavior. Of course, everything will be operationalized on the checklist, but if I go to write all of that, the plan becomes more long than it is. So just the main behavior, which is my main measured variable, that I have made sure to give the operationalization of it. Also, in terms of naturalistic or control, this is going to be a naturalistic observation because actually I'm taking people to the supermarket. It's not a laboratory where a supermarket scene has been created, and actually I'm seeing their stealing behaviors there when they don't know that they are being observed. So there's no artificiality to it. So it falls under the category of naturalistic. Also, somewhere I have mentioned that it's non-participant because the researchers are not shopping with the participants, or they're not pretending to be salesmen or anything in the supermarket. They are in their actual form, they are researchers, they're just staying far away from the participants and going on observing what they're doing. So it falls under non-participant category. Some things you will feel they are implied or they are understood. Like, of course, the researcher is not interacting with the participants when they are doing the shopping. So it is obvious that it is non-participant. Nothing is obvious. You have to mention. If it's a requirement of the syllabus, wherever you have written, wherever you feel it's becoming obvious, make sure after that you add that word, that this is non-participant or this is naturalistic, whatever it is. Don't leave anything to assumption and imagination. After this, I have mentioned something further about ethics. If you feel that the plan is becoming very long, I know some students will say that. Now, if you feel it's becoming very long, when they say in the syllabus you have to cover ethics, they have not specified how many ethics. So you could discard this entire paragraph on ethics because you have mentioned informed consent earlier. You can take that is the ethics that I'm covering. So you can shorten the plan that way. My argument against that is, first, it's more about what is relevant to be covered, that is important, rather than the length of the answer. I felt these guidelines are important, debriefing and confidentiality. So I've included them. Secondly, in the paper, since you have to design a study from only one section, not both. Like if you're doing clinical and consumer, you do it only for clinical, not for clinical and consumer. I feel you have ample time to get into relevant details, but it's up to you. Like I said, you have to check your own speed. Everyone's speed of writing is different. Also, coming to this point, this is something I mention in most videos, but this is relevant here. Your speed is slow when you have to think a lot. Just remember that. And when you have to think a lot is when you haven't practiced enough. Many students ask me how to write 10 markers on paper 3 and paper 4. It takes them too much time. They are not able to complete. The fact is, if you're very slow, your hand is not slow. Your thought process is slow. And why it is slow? Because you have not studied enough or you have not practiced enough. If you've done 10-15 study practices at a minimum, there's no way that you won't be able to think and write fast in the paper. So think about your writing is slow or your practice is less, and then start practicing right away. Okay, so coming to ethics of the study, there has to be a debriefing session. In debriefing, what I mainly want to explain to them is that they have undergone covert sensitization, because as I had mentioned previously, this is not told to them when their consent is taken. So they need to know, they have a right to know exactly which treatment they have undergone. So that I explained to them. I also explained to them about the covert observations that are done when they were at the supermarket. That is again something they don't know about. So I feel it's very important to disclose to them, to address any doubts that they have, and to seek their permission to write the results, because after all the observation is done without their permission. So even at this time, we can't undo the observation, but if they don't want the results to be published, at least that much we can do, is take their permission and then only publish the results. Of course, when we tell them that we want to publish results, we also tell them that they will not be personally identified in the study, and only group-wise summaries of their results will be given. Like 10 participants in total, how many of them showed kleptomania or didn't show, that is how it will be presented in the report, not with the identity of which participant showed and which didn't show. Again, some things, like I said, are important to be made relevant. That's why I have written such things. If I just write confidentiality will be there, debriefing will be there, it's again generic, does not show my critical thinking or my ability to apply anything to a study. Those are points which I can write for any study. So I have to write in a way that is relevant to what I have designed. In the next paragraph, I have spoken about reliability. As I mentioned previously, we have to talk about how we are improving reliability and validity in the plan. For validity, I had mentioned earlier, there are multiple places. Actually, there are other places also where I can talk about validity. I can say results are more valid when we are doing covert observation, because participants won't show demand characteristics. They don't know they are being observed. Or I can say there is validity when we are operationalizing the dependent variable, because then there won't be any confusion regarding what is to be noted on the checklist. there are multiple places where we can talk about validity. Doing that again, it will make it very lengthy, and you also have to take a judgment on when things start becoming excessive or irrelevant. So where majorly you have taken some major action to improve validity, like I took in the instructions, there you can point it out. Just every feature that's coming under validity, like just because it's coming under it, we have not even put any special effort. It's just inherent in that feature. So going on pointing it out is not very advisable. More about what we are specially doing, highlighting, that would be more helpful. So even for reliability, the special measures I have taken to increase reliability, such as making sure the procedure is in a fixed sequence. When I've written my procedure, I have highlighted in the first few sessions, this is exactly what will be done, relaxation. In the next few sessions, covert sensitization will begin. So sequencing, I have taken care that everyone undergoes the same sequence. Also observation, I have made sure to have a standardized and operationalized checklist. So all these are the efforts to increase reliability. I have mentioned them here. Just like the case with validity, for reliability also there will be many things to talk about, but I don't need to point out each and everything. This covers the procedure of the study, and we saw within the procedure there are lots of things like ethics, reliability, validity, and even the main parts of the observation. What remains after the procedure of any study is data analysis. Because we are not really conducting the study, we can't have a results and conclusion section. So where we can end our studies with data analysis. So we should make sure we write it in a nice way and in a conclusive way, that the reader can see in the end how results will be derived if the study was really to be performed. This has also been made very explicit in the syllabus now. So they have mentioned you have to cover scoring, type of data, and type of analysis, like descriptive statistics. So now you know exactly what you have to cover. So in terms of scoring, I have spoken about quantitative data and how that quantitative data is being obtained. That is important to mention in the scoring, like calculating percentages. So I have observed a lot of things while in the supermarket, but mainly I'm focusing on the stealing behavior. Stealing at least one item I have taken as the criterion for deciding whether covert sensitization is effective or not. That is, if the person steals at least one item, it goes to prove that it has not been effective. I have taken a strict criterion. So that I have indicated will be converted to quantitative data by calculating percentages. Rest of it I have just noted under secondary observations, because rest of the things like they are shaking or not, they are getting upset or not, if I go into analysis of each and everything, again the plan will be very lengthy. Like again I would like to relate this to Milgram study which we have seen last year. They had a very definite criterion. Number of participants who gave a certain level of shock, that was used to determine whether the prods were effective or not, like obedience had worked or not. So even I have given a very definitive criterion that stealing at least one item will determine whether the plan is effective or not. Other things, like I said, I have put them under secondary observations. Everything we don't have to analyze in detail to come to a conclusion. The whole agenda of the study is to see whether covert sensitization is effective or not. So that we come to know by looking at then people are stealing or not. So that is enough, and it keeps it simple. So that's one thing. Also, I have made the criterion very explicit, like if 50% patients are stealing, like 50% or more, then this treatment is not effective. Otherwise it is. What is there? We give a hypothesis in the beginning. So then how are we going to test the hypothesis in the end? Like how are we going to take a judgment about it? That is very important to mention, because like I said, we are not conducting the study, so we won't actually be able to verify. But how we have to think about it is, if I was to conduct the study, how would I know in the end my hypothesis has been supported or not? So that is what I'm mentioning over here, that I've set a fixed criterion and that is going to be my basis of judgment. Also, of course, by itself, just setting a criterion does not support or disprove the hypothesis. There have to be significance tests later. So we just make a mention because they are not in the syllabus. In the syllabus, to check whether results are significant, like they apply to the population or not, we don't have any inferential statistics that we're going to perform, but we do make a mention because again we have to talk about hypothesis is being supported or not. Okay, so this is the 10-marker plan for the study. Like I said, while I was doing the video, I felt that you should read it first, then you will be able to understand how I went about it. So do take the time to read it before coming to this video. Like if you've not read it already, go back, read it and come again. Okay, coming to the next section, which is a continuation of this. One thing is you have to describe the psychological knowledge on which your plan is based. This is fairly simple. It's a descriptive type of answer. It is descriptive but does not mean that you describe everything under the sun. Only what is relevant to your plan. What is relevant to our plan is firstly what is kleptomania, because the study is about kleptomania. So I've given a definition for it. Whatever definition you have memorized from the textbook, just write that over here. Next is what is covert sensitization. I've given a definition for it. After that, coming to the most important thing, the case study by Glover et al., from where we have drawn the main ideas. That study has lots of details, of course, because it's a case study. Now I cannot write everything over here. So only those things that I have made use of to come to my plan, only that I mention from the study. Keep one thing in sight when you're writing this answer. This answer is for 4 marks. How much can you write just for 4 marks? If you go on writing everything, will you have time left to write anything else? Just think about that. So only write how much you have made use of to cover in your 10 marks. Don't write more than that. So I've spoken about muscle relaxation because I had used it in my plan. Your plan could be a little different. So you write what is relevant to your plan. Same way I have made use of the aversive stimuli. So I mentioned in Glover's study how aversive stimuli were made use of. Also I have mentioned something about sessions, how many sessions they will have to attend. So I have mentioned that the lady had to attend bi-weekly sessions. The 4-marker, though it is descriptive, here it will be different for different students depending on what plan they have made in the 10-marker. So make sure your 4-marker is relevant to your 10-marker. Coming to how 2 features of the plan have been used in the study. The previous answer still some students do well. This answer they make lot of mistakes. The main mistake they make is not being specific or not specifically tying the features of their study to what they have drawn from the textbook. Again, they tend to be very generic. So they'll say things like in Glover's study there was some aversive imagination. So in this study also there was aversive imagination. Where? That is the question. In which part of the study? How? How was aversive imagination used? Don't write answers which any student can write and it can apply to all plans. Those are known as generic answers. Never write those. So here what you have to do is, you have to mention, for example, I have included muscle relaxation in my plan. Where in my plan muscle relaxation? In the first few sessions of the procedure. So where? Exactly where I have mentioned. How? How means if they were too anxious, they would have to take medication like the patient took in Glover's study. I have mentioned that. If they're not very anxious, they could just learn the PMR technique. I have mentioned that. So where and how is this feature in my plan? I have mentioned that. Then I've taken one more feature. In terms of organization, again in the paper, just like I have written, you could make 2 paragraphs that makes it more clear. One paragraph dedicated to each feature. That tends to be good. So consider writing it that way. In terms of writing, always write in paragraphs. Never write it a continuous stretch. Very difficult for the examiner to read. And break the paragraphs in the correct places. So if there are 2 features, it's ideal if one paragraph is dedicated to one feature. Okay, so the next thing we can mention is the feature of imagining unpleasant situations. That I have used. Again, where have I used in my syllabus? The study. The patient had to imagine being arrested or imagine nauseating, those things. Why have I included, or how have I included? Again, in the imagination, I've drawn from Glover's study, because in that also they had to imagine similar things. The lady had to imagine first being arrested. When that did not work for her, she imagined vomiting and being stared at and those things. So I have drawn directly from there into my procedure. Okay, so that is how we answer the second part of B. Now questions for C are unpredictable. Like I forgot to mention, B, 1 and 2 are fixed. It's always going to be that way. C can be any questions, but they're very simple to answer. Again, the same guideline. It's repetitive, but that is the fact. Students just make answers very generic. That is the problem everywhere. So if they're asking you something like one reason for structured or unstructured observation. Structured observation is standardized, so it is there. That is not the way of writing. It is reliable because of standardization. In my study, what was standardized? How did it help if it was standardized? So what was standardized was using the same checklist. So you're using fixed checklist to record behavior. And how did it make the study reliable? By making sure that behaviors are consistently being observed. If the participant is picking up an item and putting into his pocket, that is counted as stealing. So one item with which he does that, that is also stealing. For the next item with which he does that, that is also stealing. So that is consistency in measurement. Of course, I've not written like this, like I'm explaining it to you, but you can read the answer and see I've written it in a relevant manner. So that is important, making it relevant to your study. So in my study, because of using the same checklists in the structured observation, there is consistency in which behaviors are being counted as stealing and which are not being counted as that. That is what is increasing the reliability. One reason, one more thing is, whenever there's a one reason type of question, it has to be a strength. Okay, I know it sounds obvious, but some students don't realize. They start saying how it is a structured observation. So because there's a standard checklist, it's a structured observation. But they want to know the reason. So reliability word has to be there, the strength has to be emphasized. That is important. Next is one strength of using covert observation. So one strength of covert observation, we know it increases validity, demand characteristics are reduced. And again, to make it specific to the study, participants were unaware that in the supermarket, their behaviors are being recorded. If they knew that that was the case, they would have not stolen even if they wanted to, because they want to impress the researcher. That chances I have reduced here, that they're purposely not stealing. I'm getting to see their genuine behavior. So that increases validity. And then finally, they've asked for one reason for choice of steps for making the study reliable. Number of things we have done to make the study reliable. For a 2 marker, one reason. We can't cover everything for sure. So any one feature we can take which increases reliability. Now in the study itself, I had mentioned about standardization, how that increases reliability. So just not to be repetitive, I have taken the point of inter-observer reliability. In my study, I had included 2 observers, and later they were going to cross-check their findings with each other and make sure that they, in calculating the results, take only those observations on which both are agreeable. So such features are there. How this increases reliability, like what is the strength of this? Because there's consistency in measurement across the observers. If only one observer was to see things, then just because of random chance or random fluctuations, he could have recorded some behaviors. Like maybe he got distracted in between or something. But if 2 observers are saying the same thing, that a person is stealing, it's unlikely to be just because of random fluctuation. It must actually be the case. So that is what I have mentioned over here. That's what I've explained. Okay, so that is it for this video. I know it's very brief. I've really not gotten into the details of why I have planned anything. What I have written. I've gone into why. I've not discussed like what I've written. Actually, I'm really having a time crunch right now because exams are coming. Also because I feel it's more important to refer and read the model answer thoroughly and understand for yourself how the features are being used, This is strictly a supplementary video that I have put in, just because I was getting requests that people want to hear from me how to plan the study. That's why you'll have to put some effort into this. Read the study first and all the answers, like really go through it carefully. Then only you will understand what I have said through this video. Okay, so that is it for this video. I know some videos are pending also, like some answers I have not covered in paper 3 videos. I'll try to upload those also soon. Today I'm ending here, and hope to see you in another video. Okay, bye then.